What is your name and age?
My name is Shirley Pechter. Shirley Abelson Pechter, I should say. And my age is 91 and a half.
What is your maiden name? What is your maiden name?
Abelson.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Altoona in 1920. And I have belonged to the temple all of these 91 and a half years.
Where else have you lived in your life?
Where what?
Where have you lived in your life?
Where have I lived other than Altoona, you mean? Well, I've lived in a lot of different places because you don't remember it, but there was a war in the 40s, and we were part of that. And so I was moving around wherever my husband was, and so I've lived a lot of different places, but I lived the longest in Altoona, and next to that in New York City.
Do you speak any other languages?
Yes. My children lived in many places. They lived in Mexico, they lived in Europe, they lived in Brussels and London. I mean, I've lived...
Your turn. Me? What is your Hebrew name?
Well, the Hebrew name is Sorka. In English, it's Sarah.
What countries did your family come from?
Well, my grandfather came from Russia, and most of the family came from Russia. My mother's family came many years before that, and they were actually Americans who lived in New Jersey. My husband's family came from England and Germany, and we have visited all the different places where my grandfathers, both grandfathers lived, and my husband's family lived.
How did your family come to Altoona?
Well, my grandfather came to, you know that most of the refugees come to Ellis Island. They didn't. They came into Baltimore. And my grandfather pulled a cart, and they started across the mountain to come west. And they were going from Baltimore, hopefully, to Pittsburgh, and then on to the West Coast. But when he got as far as Huntington, and it was very, very hard for him to pull a cart. And that was in the 1890s. And I looked all this up because about 10 years ago, we had a 100th anniversary. And I wanted to know how they got here and everything. So I looked it up in Harrisburg, in the archives there. When he got to Huntington, he rested for a while, and then he thought, well, I'll go on. He came on to Altoona, and he thought, can't go any further. Meantime, this is 1891. He met a woman here and married her, my grandmother. They had 10 children. My dad was the oldest of the 10, and in 1893, my dad was born in Altoona on what is now 9th Avenue. Okay? So that's how I got to Altoona.
What were your parents' occupations?
Well, my grandparents started the scrapyard. My grandfather was the first. This will be a little hard for you to take. My grandfather was the first person, actually in the archives it says, in 1893, has son, that's my dad, gets horse. Now, up to this time, he was pulling the cart. Now, he has a horse. So now he decides, he's got about 5 children. He's going to get, build it into a business. So eventually, there's something wrong.
No, just keep going.
Eventually, he got the first crane between Harrisburg and Philadelphia. And this is quite a few years later. He was teaching the man how to run the crane, and the guy didn't know, picked my grandfather up, and that was the end. So they were in the scrap business. From that, my dad went into what he thought would be the steel business, and we refined the whole thing, and today that is our business.
Did your family speak other languages?
Did what?
Did your family speak other languages?
Yeah. Yeah. You mean, did she like the ideas? Or what do you mean?
Like, did your family just speak other languages?
Did they speak Yiddish or anything, other languages at home?
Oh, no. My grandfather on my mother's side was born in Morristown, New Jersey, so he knew English. So, and they lived with us. So that side of the family, we always spoke English. My other grandmother spoke English, but all the little idioms that we have in what they call Yiddish, I know all of those because they were constantly being used at home.
When you were my age, who was your favorite musical artist or band?
Now, if you say that again, I'll appreciate it.
When you were my age, who was your favorite musical artist or band?
I was my own favorite, and I'll tell you why. I know you didn't mean that, but I'm just going to digress for a minute. Music was my major all my life. From the time I was born, I think music was the major thing in my life.
Okay.
And as far as artists were concerned, you're what, 14, 13?
12.
12. Very good. Well, when I was 12, as I said, my time was spent on classical music all the time. And I gave my first solo concert in Altoona when I was 13. And there was it's no longer here, it was called the Widger Music Hall. I don't think you would even remember that.
No.
Because they've been gone.
Where was it at?
Well, I was born in 1920, so it was 1932.
A little before my time.
I know that, but I thought maybe you might have known the name of the hall.
Mm-hmm.
We had all our concerts there. People that came in from out, what is now the Mishler, you know? All right, at that time, that was tantamount to the Mishler.
What kind of games did you and your friends used to play?
What kind of dreams?
Games.
Oh, games. Well, let's see. I don't think we were much of a game. We were all busy doing what we had to do. I was in music, so all my spare time was spent practicing, getting ready for conservatory, doing what I wanted to do was be a classical pianist for concerts. Okay? So games were kind of out. However, with my own children and grandchildren, that table over there was where you are sitting right now. And we played all kinds of games. And games were teaching methods for me. Okay? Like, we played blackjack because that was good for math. Okay? That's how we used to do it.
Did you grow up with other Jewish children?
Did I what?
Did you grow up with other Jewish children?
Yes, indeed, I did. There weren't a great deal. Like right now, there aren't a great deal. However, those that were, I was part of everything. I loved the temple. I loved the synagogue because my grandfather was one of the originators of the synagogue. So I've always been a member there, even though I'm a member of the temple.